Justice does not come with a price tag. The cases people laugh off as small are often the ones that show me exactly who a person is. Come sit with me for this one, because stories like this do not happen every week, and when they do, they leave a mark that does not wash off with time. I have carried this case in my chest for years now. If you stay with me, I will tell you how one old man walked into my courtroom over a single ticket, and how the truth that followed changed every person in that room, including me. On 18th of December 2023, I unlocked my chambers at Cedar Grove Municipal Court in Cedar Grove, Ohio, at 6:14 that morning. The air outside was raw and wet, the kind of cold that sits in your knuckles. I had already been up since 4:45, as I always was, and I had already finished my first cup of black coffee before sunrise. My father used to say that if you want to serve the law, you arrive before your excuses do. So I did what I had done for 28 years. I hung my coat, set my files in a straight line, and prepared to listen. My clerk, Denise Kramer, met me at the door with her reading glasses halfway down her nose and a docket sheet in her hand. She said, "Morning, Judge. You've got the Holloway ticket contest first, and then the veil arraignment tied to it. That was not normal. Tickets do not usually grow teeth. They do not usually drag a second file behind them." I took the sheet from her, and there it was in neat black print. State v. Arthur Holloway, citation number 23 TRD 447281, City vs. Chloe Mercer Vale, case 23 CRB 88216. One line under the other, like fate had already made up its mind. I remember touching the edge of that paper and feeling something I've learned never to ignore. Some mornings carry a weight before a single word is spoken in court. The hallway was still quiet. Bailiff Marcus Delaney was setting out water cups. The lights in courtroom 2B hummed faintly overhead. Outside my window, sleet tapped the glass in little hard bursts. I had seen thousands of cases by then, every kind of lie and every kind of grief. Even so, I knew before 7 a.m. that I would remember that day long after the gavel came down. At 8:31, when Denise called the room to order, the first person I noticed was not the wealthy defendant. It was the old man sitting in the second row with both hands folded over a brown envelope so carefully you would have thought it held something breakable. His name was Arthur Holloway. He was 84 years old. He had the kind of stillness I have only ever seen in men who learned long ago how to stand inside pain without asking the world to clap for them. Arthur wore a clean white shirt buttoned all the way to the neck, a dark green sweater with one mended elbow, and a charcoal coat brushed so neatly it told me he had prepared for court the night before. His shoes were old brown leather polished by hand. He walked with a cane, but he held himself straight. When he rose, he took off his veteran's mobility office cap before stepping fully into the aisle. That small act told me more about his manners than most witness statements ever do. He did not carry anger into the room, he carried resolve. I want to ask you something before I go further, and I mean it with all the honesty I have. Have you ever watched someone walk into a room already defeated on paper and still somehow carry themselves with more dignity than the people with all the money and all the advantages? If you have, then you know why I noticed Arthur before I noticed anyone else. Then the courtroom doors opened again, and in walked Chloe Mercer Vale, age 32, and every eye in the gallery moved toward her. She had on a camel Tom Ford coat over a cream silk blouse, black tailored pants, Balenciaga sneakers that had never seen real weather, and a wide black Hermes belt with gold hardware that caught the overhead light. A Rolex date just flashed on her wrist each time she lifted her phone. The phone itself sat in a Louis Vuitton case with her initials stamped in gold. She did not look around the room the way most people do when they enter a court for the first time. She looked at it as if she had wandered into a place built for other people. She came in with her defense lawyer, Gavin Pike, and a young assistant carrying a charger, a planner, and a garment bag. That assistant should not even have been in that position at counsel table, but Chloe had already begun pushing lines before the first case note was read. Marcus stepped forward and told the assistant to sit in the back. Chloe rolled her eyes so hard I could see it from the bench. Then she sat down, crossed one leg over the other, and looked toward Arthur the way some people look at a stain they resent having to notice. I had read enough of the file to know the bare bones. On 19th October 2023 at 10:47 p.m. outside Parker's Pharmacy at 214 East Bell Street, Arthur Holloway's 2002 Ford Ranger and Chloe Vale's pearl white Lamborghini Urus made contact in the pickup lane. Officer Miguel Torres, badge 4172, issued Arthur a citation for improper backing under Cedar Grove Ordinance 331.37. The fine was $186.50. That was the paper version. Paper is often the least honest thing in a courtroom. Arthur was there to contest that ticket because $186.50 mattered when your total monthly income was $1,764.20. It mattered even more when your truck had 187,442 miles on it and was the same truck you used 3 mornings a week to volunteer for the Cedar Grove Veterans Mobility Office. It mattered when you were raising your 16-year-old granddaughter, Lena Holloway, after your daughter Carla died in June of 2018, and when the girl's asthma medicine still had to be paid for whether life was fair or not. Chloe was there because after Arthur contested the ticket, and after a few people finally looked closer, the city charged her with reckless operation, criminal damaging, and filing a false police report. That did not happen overnight. It happened because truth is stubborn, and because some people are foolish enough to think age and silence make a man easy to bury. If you think money can walk into a room like that and still win by muscle alone, stay with me. I dared myself that morning not to guess too early, because I have seen rich people lie with polished teeth and poor people lie in cracked shoes. The law does not let me convict clothing. It asks me to listen until the facts stand up on their own. When I asked Arthur to come forward, he moved slowly. Not because he was uncertain, but because his right knee had been bad since his second tour overseas. He told me that under oath later, plain as day, without drama. He had served 22 years in the United States Army, mostly motor pool and convoy duty from 1961 until 1983. He had a silver star-shaped scar near his left temple from shrapnel in 1968. He never brought that up to earn sympathy. It came out only because the prosecutor asked why his hearing aid on the left side had clear tape on it. He said, "Because I fix what I can, Your Honor." Those are the words that stayed with me. I fix what I can. Arthur had been at Mercy East Urgent Care with Lena that night. She had gone in at 8:56 p.m., wheezing hard after school band practice in the cold. The doctor there gave her a breathing treatment and sent Arthur to Parker's for a refill of albuterol and a short prednisone pack. Parker's stayed open until 11 down p.m. Arthur drove the 6.2 miles from Mercy East to East Bell Street with Lena in the passenger seat, the heater on low because the truck's fan only worked on one setting. He parked in the marked 15-minute pickup zone in front of the pharmacy at 10:43 p.m., leaving Lena wrapped in her red school blanket while he went inside. Janice Lewin, the night pharmacy technician, knew him by name. She would later tell me, in careful sworn testimony, that Arthur came in breathing a little hard himself, not from panic but from hurry, and said, "I'm sorry to rush you, Ms. Janice. My girl needs this tonight." He paid with a debit card that was declined once before it went through. Janice said he smiled anyway and joked that his bank card was slower than he was. That one small detail landed in me hard. The people who live close to the edge are often the ones working hardest to keep everyone else comfortable. While Arthur was at the pharmacy counter, Chloe Mercer Vale was a half block down the street outside Rue Noir Studio, where a holiday launch event had ended at 10:30. She was not coming from a hospital. She was not carrying medicine. She was filming content. Her public Instagram account, a Chloe Vale official, had 2.3 million followers. Her TikTok had just under 900,000. Most of her posts were designer handbags, makeup lines, sponsored rooftop dinners, and short clips of her pearl white Urus with music laid under the sound. At 10:46 p.m., according to the phone extraction later entered into evidence, she texted a friend named Marissa Cole, "Running late. Need that curb spot by Parker's. I'm not circling like a peasant." That text became important for reasons she did not understand until it was much too late. When Arthur stepped back outside with the orange prescription bag in his left hand, Lena was coughing again in the truck. He got behind the wheel, started the engine, checked his rearview mirror, and began to ease backward. At that exact time, Chloe pulled her Urus hard from the travel lane into the pickup lane at an angle too sharp for the space. Her front right quarter panel struck the left rear corner of Arthur's truck. The impact was not huge. It was enough to snap his old taillight, dent her panel, and throw the orange pharmacy bag from Arthur's hand onto the wet curb where one of Lena's inhaler boxes split open. That was the collision. Not fast, not dramatic, but what happened after it is why I am telling you this now. If you are the kind of person who cannot stand seeing someone gentle get shoved around by somebody who thinks money is a personality, keep listening. The ugliest part of this story was still waiting just under the surface, and by the time it rose, there was no way to put it back down. Officer Miguel Torres, badge 4172, arrived first at 10:54 p.m. Officer Leah Benton, badge 5519, arrived 3 minutes later. Arthur was standing by the truck with his cane in one hand and the wet prescription bag in the other. Chloe was beside her Urus in a cream blouse and a long coat, already crying without a tear on her cheek. I have watched thousands of witnesses talk. Real fear does not usually check its reflection in a side mirror between sentences. According to Officer Torres's original report, Chloe stated Arthur backed blindly into my parked vehicle and became aggressive when confronted. She also told Torres she was afraid due to his size and erratic behavior. Arthur was 5'8", 162 pounds, and leaning on a cane. Torres wrote the citation at 11:08 p.m. He noted probable cause for improper backing based on vehicle position in Chloe's statement. He did not arrest Arthur. He did not cite Chloe. He gave Arthur the yellow ticket and told him he could contest it if he disagreed. Arthur took it with both hands. He did not curse. He did not raise his voice. He looked at the amount, swallowed once, and said, "Officer, I'll contest it, because that isn't what happened." Then he helped Lena with her inhaler right there in the truck while the rain came down in a thin, hard mist. A lot of people would have paid that ticket just to make the problem leave. Arthur did not. He filed a not guilty plea on 2nd November 2023. He rode the number 4 bus downtown to do it because his truck was in the shop for an estimate he could not afford. Denise remembered him at the clerk's window, hat in hand, asking how to spell contest citation on the form because his hands shook when he wrote too fast. That alone would have been enough to make me listen closely when the file landed on my desk. What changed the case at first was not some grand speech. It was a phone call from Janice Lewin at Parker's to Assistant City Prosecutor Naomi Price. Janice said the report did not match what she saw through the front glass. Then Samuel Ortiz, a city bus driver on Route 6, came forward after recognizing the truck photo posted online. He said he had seen the angle of the hit from the bus stop at East Bell and Carter. Naomi reopened the file. She requested the body cam. She subpoenaed the pharmacy timestamp logs. One honest person after another tugged at the loose thread. On 27th of November 2023, after review, the city filed charges against Chloe. At her arraignment on 18th December, the very morning I first saw both of them in my courtroom, she stood in front of me with one hand tucked into her coat pocket as if she were bored at a dry cleaning counter. I advised her of the charges. I explained her rights. I set a bond hearing for 20th of December and ordered as a condition of release that she have no contact with Arthur Holloway or Lena Holloway, direct or indirect, including through social media. She looked straight at me and said, "I don't even know these people," and that was the first lie she told in my courtroom. It was not the worst. Tell me honestly, because I would want to know. At the moment, someone looks a stranger in the face and says, "I don't even know these people," after leaving damage all over their life, what does that do to your faith in basic decency? I still ask myself that when a room goes quiet in just the wrong way. The bond hearing on 20th December lasted 12 minutes. Gavin Pike argued she was a lifelong resident, no flight risk, successful businesswoman, active with charities, no prior record. Naomi Price pointed out that Chloe had 2.3 million followers, the resources to leave if she wanted, and a recent history of trying to shape public narratives in her favor. I set a $10,000 unsecured bond, kept the no contact order in place, and reminded her in plain language that even one indirect contact with Mr. Holloway or his granddaughter could become contempt of court. She gave me a thin smile and said, "Understood, Your Honor," in the same tone people use when they are waiting for valet service. My father used to warn me about that tone. He said the most dangerous people in a courtroom are not always the loud ones. Sometimes they are the ones who believe rules are for other people. We set the trial for 16 January 2024. Then defense counsel asked for a continuance, saying he needed more time to review late discovery. Naomi Price did not fight it because by then the city had started pulling records from the pharmacy, the bus stop camera across Carter Avenue, and Chloe's public posts. I granted the continuance and reset the matter for 12th of February 2024 at 9 a.m. Time matters in a case like this. Delay can either bury truth or sharpen it. In this case, it sharpened. When 12th of February came, the morning was clear and bitter cold. I got to the courthouse at 6:09 a.m. with my coffee in one hand and the amended file in the other. There were more pages now, more exhibits, more names. Denise Kramer had flagged 3 sections in yellow. Marcus Delaney had already checked the sound system and set extra chairs in the back because word had spread. A wealthy local influencer against an 84-year-old veteran made people curious. What kept them there was what they learned once the room went quiet. Arthur was already seated when I entered. Same green sweater, same careful posture, but he looked thinner than he had in December. His cheeks had hollowed just a little. Lena sat beside him in a navy cardigan and her school slacks, a folder on her lap, and an inhaler in the side pocket of her backpack. She was 16, but that morning, she looked older in the way children do when life has used them too early. She kept one hand on her grandfather's sleeve as if she could steady him by touch alone. Chloe came in 10 minutes later wearing a black wool Saint Laurent coat, slim sunglasses she kept on until Marcus told her to remove them, and a cream cashmere dress with a pair of pointed boots that clicked hard across the courtroom tile. Her hair was arranged like she expected cameras. Her Rolex was there again. So was the Louis Vuitton phone case. Her lawyer carried 2 binders. She carried boredom. When Denise called the case, Chloe did not rise until Gavin nudged her elbow. If you know someone who still believes that a small case can never tell a big truth, send them this story when it is done. Some of the deepest wrongs I've ever seen came wrapped in things the paperwork called minor. Naomi opened with a voice so steady it made people lean in. She said this case was not about a scratch between vehicles. It was about a lie told against the right target. She said Arthur Holloway was chosen because he was old, quiet, and easy to dismiss. She said the evidence would show Chloe Vale tried to turn a minor collision into a shield for her own pre-existing damage, and then used status, attention, and class contempt to force that lie onto a man living on a fixed income. Gavin Pike stood and said the city had built a morality play around an ordinary parking lot mistake. He called Arthur sympathetic but mistaken. He called Chloe successful and therefore visible, which meant, in his words, a convenient villain for people who resent success. I wrote that line down. When a lawyer starts blaming resentment before the facts are heard, it usually means the facts have teeth. The first witness was Officer Miguel Torres, badge 4172. He wore his dark blue uniform and answered cleanly at first. He said he arrived at 10:54 p.m. on 19th October 2023. He observed 2 vehicles in the Parkers pickup lane, the 2002 Ford Ranger angled backward and the Lamborghini Urus angled forward. He said Chloe appeared upset and Arthur appeared frustrated. He testified that based on the position of the vehicles and statements at the scene, he believed Arthur had backed into Chloe. Naomi did not raise her voice. She never needed to. She walked him through his body cam video timestamp by timestamp. At 10:55:14, Chloe said he backed out fast. At 10:55:39, she said, I was parked. At 10:56:02, she said, I was slowing to park. At 10:56:19, she said, I had just pulled in. Naomi paused after each one. The courtroom could hear the changes plain as a church bell. Torres shifted on the stand and admitted, yes, her story evolved within 1 minute and 5 seconds. Then Naomi asked about Arthur. On body cam at 10:57:03, Arthur can be heard saying, sir, my granddaughter needs this inhaler. I looked before I moved. At 10:57:16, Lena is heard coughing in the truck. At 10:58:08, Arthur asks permission to hand her the medicine before answering more questions. Torres admitted Arthur was calm, did not threaten anyone, and complied throughout. Naomi asked him why his report stated Arthur became aggressive. Torres swallowed once, looked toward me, and said, that language was based on Ms. Vale's characterization, not my direct observation. You could feel the room change then, not loudly, quietly, like cold moving under a door. The second witness was Officer Leah Benton, badge 5519. She had arrived at 10:57 p.m. and handled photographs. She was younger than Torres and more careful in her answers. She testified that Chloe kept asking whether the vehicle angle made it obvious enough. Those were her words. Naomi repeated them back. Obvious enough for what, officer? Benton said. For a citation, I assumed. Then Benton added something she had put in her supplemental notes, but not in the main narrative. Chloe asked whether Arthur had insurance before anyone had measured damage. That landed badly for the defense. Gavin objected to relevance. I overruled it. Money has a way of asking questions too early. Naomi then displayed the first set of photographs on the courtroom monitor. Arthur's left tail light was cracked and hanging by the wire. The truck bed had a crescent dent near the rusted wheel well. Chloe's front right quarter panel showed a longer scrape, but the upper edge of that scrape had dried dirt settled into it. Sergeant Daniel Cho from Cedar Grove Traffic Reconstruction, not yet on the stand, had already marked that detail in his report. Dirt inside fresh damage tells a story. It tells time. At that moment, I want you to look inward with me for just one breath. Have you ever had a stranger with more power than you decide what kind of person you were before you even opened your mouth? That feeling sat in that courtroom like a third lawyer. Janice Lewin came next from Parker's Pharmacy, her uniform vest neat over a pale blue shirt. She was 57, with tired eyes and the kind of practical voice that makes juries trust a person before they know why. She said Arthur came in at 10:43 p.m., paid for one albuterol inhaler and one prednisone pack at 10:46:28 p.m., and apologized twice for the hurry because his granddaughter was waiting in the truck. She said she watched through the front glass as he came out holding the orange bag. Janice pointed directly to the screen when Naomi showed the still image from the pharmacy window angle. It was not a perfect camera. It caught reflections and rain streaks, but you could still see Arthur's truck begin to back slowly while Chloe's SUV nose cut in from the lane. Janice said, that white SUV was moving into him. I remember because I thought that woman is taking that corner too tight. She did not embellish. She did not need to. Truth stands straighter when nobody tries to dress it up. Gavin tried to shake her by asking about distance, glare, and whether she could judge motion through glass on a rainy night. Janice folded her hands and said, Sir, I have worked that counter 11 years. I know what my window shows me. The gallery let out a soft murmur. Marcus turned his head just enough to settle them. I did not have to say a word. Then came Samuel Ortiz, bus driver, 49 years old, employed by Cedar Grove Transit for 17 years. He wore his navy root jacket and held his cap in both hands. Samuel had been off his bus and standing at the shelter at East Bell and Carter for his 1050 relief when he saw the contact. He said Chloe's SUV came in like she owned the curb. Those were his exact words. He testified Arthur's truck was moving backward very slowly, but the SUV was the vehicle closing the gap. Gavin pushed hard on Samuel, suggesting bias because Samuel had liked a Facebook post supporting Arthur. Samuel did not flinch. He said, I liked a post that said old people shouldn't get blamed for something they didn't do. If that's bias, write it down however you like. Even I had to keep my face still for that one. The room nearly smiled. After the morning break, Sergeant Daniel Cho took the stand with his reconstruction file. He was not dramatic. He was a careful man with square glasses, gray at the temples, and the patient way of speaking I have learned to trust. He explained transfer marks, contact angles, and relative motion in plain language. He said the scrape on Arthur's truck was low and rearward. The scrape on Chloe's panel extended forward to back at an angle that fit a moving turn into a backing vehicle, not a stationary vehicle being struck head-on by blind reverse movement. Then he pointed to the dirt packed into the upper half of the damage on Chloe's panel. He said that portion predated the collision. He could not say by how long from the scene photos alone, but he could say it was older than one rainy night. Naomi asked the number. He said at least several hours, possibly more, because fresh paint transfer from Arthur's truck appeared only on the lower edge. That was the first real crack in Chloe's composure. She sat up, her jaw tightened. She whispered hard into Gavin's ear. Her heel began tapping. Tap, tap, tap. In a courtroom, little sounds can become their own testimony. If you have stayed with me this far, stay a little longer. The next turn in this story was the one that made people stop shifting in their seats and start holding their breath. Before lunch, Naomi moved Exhibit 14 into evidence. It was a certified estimate from Belmont European Auto, dated 20th October 2023 at 8:12 a.m. for $18,430.70 in repairs to the Urus front quarter panel, bumper trim, and headlamp housing. On its own, that might have meant little. Luxury cars cost ugly money to repair. But attached to that estimate was Chloe's written insurance statement claiming all listed damage occurred at 10:47 p.m. on 19th October outside Parker's Pharmacy, when elderly male driver reversed at speed into my parked vehicle. Naomi held up the statement and asked Sergeant Cho whether all listed damage matched the collision he reconstructed. He said no, clean and flat, no. He said the headlamp housing damage and upper panel crease were inconsistent with Arthur's bumper height and truck geometry. In simple terms, those injuries belonged to some other event. Gavin objected again. Speculation. I overruled. Cho was an expert witness. Chloe stared at the monitor as if anger alone could blur the image. We broke for lunch at 12:11 p.m. Arthur stayed seated until everyone else had moved. Lena opened a small plastic container of crackers from her bag and handed him two without a word. He took them and patted her wrist. Chloe left laughing too loudly into her phone in the hallway until Marcus reminded her the no filming rule applied in the courthouse. She said, "No one cares about this circus outside town gossip pages." He said, "They do in my courtroom hallway." I appreciated him for that. During the lunch break, Denise brought me a sealed note from Naomi Price. Inside was a notice that the state had just cleared a records custodian to appear in person that afternoon with authenticated vehicle intake photographs from Rue Noir Studios valet service. I read it once and then again. Timing in court can feel almost holy when it arrives like that. The defense had the same notice. I offered time to review. Gavin asked for 20 minutes. I gave him 30. When we reconvened at 1:07 p.m., Chloe looked irritated in a new way, not bored now, threatened. I asked Naomi for her next witness. She called Leonard Bass, valet manager at Rue Noir Studio. He was 38 in a dark suit that fit badly at the shoulders, and he looked like a man who would rather be anywhere else. But under oath, people surprise you. Leonard testified that on 19th October 2023, Chloe arrived at Rue Noir at 9:58 p.m. in her pearl white Lamborghini Urus. Standard intake photos were taken at drop-off from all four corners of the vehicle because the studio's insurer required them for high-value guests. He identified the intake packet. In those images, taken at 9:58:41 p.m., 9:58:46 p.m., and 9:58:50 p.m., the same upper front right panel crease and headlamp scuff were already visible. The room did not gasp. It did something stranger. It stopped. Naomi then called Lena Holloway. I watched Arthur turn toward her with the kind of pain only grandparents know. He did not want her up there, but she had something the court needed, and I could see she had made peace with saying it. She stepped to the witness stand in her navy cardigan, lifted her chin, and took the oath in a clear voice. She said after the incident, someone posted a photo of her grandfather beside his truck. The post spread fast in Cedar Grove because Chloe was famous online. Lena said at school, two boys called Arthur Crash Grandpa, and one girl asked if they were trying to sue for money. She said her grandfather stopped driving for Veterans Mobility Office after 23 October because they told him he was under review until the citation was resolved. That meant 4 elderly veterans lost their regular Tuesday and Thursday ride schedule. Naomi asked Lena what that meant at home. Lena looked at the wood rail in front of her and answered carefully. She said, "It meant he pretended not to be worried so I would sleep." Then she said, bus fare and rides to her pulmonary checkups cost more than they should have because the truck sat waiting for repair estimates. She said Arthur started cutting his own blood pressure pills in half near the end of November. At that, Arthur closed his eyes for 1 second, just one. It was enough. Gavin did not cross-examine Lena for long. He asked whether she personally saw Chloe post the photo. Lena said yes. He asked whether she had a screenshot. She said yes again. Naomi moved it in through her. The screenshot showed Chloe's public Instagram story from 11:13 p.m. on 19th October 2023. Arthur stood in the rain beside his truck, cane in one hand, orange prescription bag in the other. The caption read, When a junkyard truck kisses your Urus and Grandpa wants sympathy, Cedar Grove is feral tonight. Below that was a laughing emoji and the hashtag, some people should not drive. The room made a sound then, not words, just the low human sound people make when cruelty stops being abstract. If there is a part of you that still believes kindness is weakness, hit like for this one small truth at least. The strongest people I have ever met were often the quiet ones who kept their dignity while someone else tried to take it from them. I let the screenshot stay on the monitor for 3 full seconds before it came down. 3 seconds is longer than people think when shame is hanging in the air. Chloe was looking straight ahead by then, no eye roll, no smile. Her fingers had locked around the edge of the defense table so tightly the knuckles had gone white. Naomi asked Lena one more question. Did your grandfather ever ask you to speak badly about Ms. Vale online or in public? Lena said, no, ma'am. He told me not to answer hate with hate because then it enters the house. I wrote that down too. Some families teach the law without books. After Lena stepped down, Arthur asked if he could say something. Gavin objected. Naomi said it would come during his own testimony. I sustained the order of witnesses. Arthur nodded at once. That, too, mattered to me. A man can be deeply hurt and still respect the room where he seeks help. Arthur's testimony began at 2:02 p.m. He sat because standing too long made his knee lock. He told me in the same plain tone he had used since day one that he did not come to court for money or revenge. He came because a lie had followed him home. He described the ride to urgent care, Lena's breathing, the pharmacy stop, and the moment of impact. He said Chloe came out of her SUV already holding up her phone. He said her first words to him were, "Do you even know what you just touched?" Then he said something I have never forgotten. He said, "Your Honor, I have buried a child, raised her child, and learned to live on less than I once thought a person could. I can survive a dent. I came because I cannot teach my granddaughter to stand straight if I bow down to a lie just because it is expensive." When he said that, even the HVAC seemed to hush. Gavin cross-examined hard. He asked about Arthur's age, his vision, his knee, his hearing, his reaction time. Arthur answered every question without pride or self-pity. Yes, he wore bifocals. Yes, he had arthritis in the right knee. Yes, his hearing aid on the left side was taped. But he also said he still passed the state vision test, drove only in town after dark, and had never had an at-fault accident in 48 years of licensed driving. Gavin asked whether he might have misjudged the distance. Arthur said, "Anything is possible, sir, but not everything is true." That answer traveled through the room like a clean blade. By the time court recessed at 2:47 p.m., Chloe was cornered by facts. The original story was in pieces. The damage on her car did not match her claim. Her public post showed contempt. Witnesses contradicted her. And still, when Gavin asked whether she wished to discuss a plea agreement Naomi had left open that morning, she shook her head. Not just no, a little shrug, as if remorse were for retail customers and not for her. I have to confess something to you here. There are days on the bench when I worry that people no longer fear the moral cost of lying. Have you ever felt that same chill, that sense that some folks are not ashamed of what they do until they are forced to hear it out loud? The next morning, 13th of February 2024, the courtroom was fuller than before. The benches in the back were lined with retired veterans from Arthur's volunteer office, 3 pharmacy workers from Parker's, 2 local college students writing a paper on municipal courts, and half a dozen people who probably came for spectacle. What they got instead was a lesson in how silence can grow heavier than any speech. Naomi told me she had 1 additional witness and 1 digital exhibit pending admission through a records custodian from the County Digital Evidence Unit. Gavin objected before the witness was even called. He said the city was trying the case in installments. I told him the rules allow truth to arrive when it is properly authenticated. He sat down hard enough to rattle his water cup. The witness was Lieutenant Nia Caldwell, Franklin County Digital Evidence Unit. She was not a dramatic woman. She wore a dark suit, no jewelry except a wedding band, and carried a sealed evidence pouch with chain of custody documents clipped to the front. Naomi laid foundation carefully. Caldwell testified that a search warrant executed on Chloe Vale's phone and cloud backups on 1 February 2024 recovered deleted media, post drafts, and message logs from 19th October through 22nd December 2023. That alone made the gallery lean forward. A phone can be a diary written by arrogance. The first recovered item was a deleted Snapchat video draft created at 10:51 p.m. on 19th October 2023, just 4 minutes after the collision and 3 minutes before Officer Torres arrived. On the courtroom monitor, with audio low but clear, the screen showed Arthur bent at the curb trying to gather the wet inhaler box. You could hear Lena coughing inside the truck. Chloe's voice, bright and amused, said, "Perfect. Old truck, old man, this is actually content." Then the camera tilted toward the scrape on her panel and she laughed. "He'll take the hit. Who's going to believe I clipped myself?" No one moved, no one coughed, no one shifted paper. Then the clip got worse. She zoomed in on Arthur's cap as he bent down. "Wait," she said. "He's a veteran too? Stop. This town writes itself." Then the recording cut. That was the moment the emotional weather in the courtroom changed completely. Up to then, people knew she had lied. After that, they understood she had chosen him. Not because of confusion, because of convenience, because she saw a weak target where there was actually a decent man. "I'm going to ask something of you now, and I mean it. Stop whatever else is in your hands for a moment and sit still with this part. There is a difference between making a mistake and choosing a victim, and if we forget that difference, we lose something sacred." Caldwell then introduced message logs from 11:22 p.m. the same night. Chloe texted Marissa Cole, "Posted him. If this old guy fights it, I'll bury him before breakfast." At 11:41 p.m., she texted a publicist, Quinn Adler, "Need this framed as scary old man road rage. Pull anything on him if you can." At 8:06 a.m. on 20th October, after the insurance estimate was booked, she wrote, "Add all the front right damage. They won't know the difference." Naomi asked Caldwell whether the timestamps were verified through carrier metadata. Caldwell said yes, again, clean and flat, yes. Gavin tried to salvage what he could by suggesting bravado, sarcasm, and venting. He asked whether deleted drafts always reflect final intent. Caldwell said, "No, sir, but they often reflect unguarded thought." I saw one of the college students in the back write that line down. Then Naomi moved a second digital exhibit into evidence, a post from 21st December 2023 at 9:12 p.m., the day after I ordered no contact. It was a TikTok clip of Chloe in a cream coat beside a ring light saying, "Imagine being dragged into small-town court because people with nothing think your life is a ladder." The caption read, "Can't relate to grievance culture." She never named Arthur. She never had to. Hundreds of comments below referenced the old truck guy and that veteran grandpa. It was indirect contact. It was contempt dressed in makeup lighting. I looked at Chloe and asked, "Did I not order you to refrain from direct or indirect contact related to Mr. Holloway or his granddaughter?" She stared at me for 1 second too long before saying, "I talk about my own life online, Your Honor. I can't control what poor people think things are about." The sound that moved through the gallery then was not loud, but it was hot. Marcus took 1 step forward. Denise froze with her pen above the page. I told the room to be still. Then I told Chloe Vale to stand. She stood slowly, chin high, but the color had begun to leave her face. I informed her that her statement was being taken down as potential contempt in the presence of the court. Gavin rose at once, saying his client was under strain and phrased things badly. I let him speak. Then I asked Chloe whether she wished to correct her answer. That was the moment she made the worst choice of the whole case. She looked straight at me and said, "With respect, Judge, this whole system feeds on people like me so it can pretend everyone is equal for an afternoon. You put on a robe, listen to sob stories, and call it justice. It's theater." You could hear the vent in the ceiling. You could hear somebody in the back pull in a breath through their nose. You could hear the old wood of the spectator bench creak as a veteran leaned forward. I had heard contempt before. I had heard insults before, but there was something so naked in that sentence, so certain of its own right to look down on everyone in the room, that even Chloe seemed to understand too late what she had done. My father used to say rules without heart become weapons. He also said a courtroom is the last place on earth where equality still gets a fighting chance. When she mocked that idea, she did not insult me. She insulted the room itself. Before I could speak, Naomi asked leave to call one final witness out of order due to travel constraints. It was Senior Special Investigator Andrea Ruiz from the Ohio Department of Insurance Fraud and Enforcement Division. That was the authority I had been told might appear if records cleared in time. They had. And when she walked in carrying a slim gray file case and a state seal badge, the stakes rose so fast you could feel it in people's shoulders. Ruiz testified that after reviewing Belmont European Auto's estimate, the valet intake photos from Rue Noire, and Chloe Vale's sworn insurance submission, her office opened a preliminary fraud review on 6 February 2024. She said the claimed repair amount of $18,430.70 included damage documented before the Parkers' collision. She also said Chloe submitted the claim with a declaration that the listed damage came from Arthur Holloway's vehicle. Then Ruiz added the sentence that changed the legal meaning of everything. She said, based on the records before us, Ms. Vale did not merely misdescribe a parking lot incident. She used a false statement to seek payment for unrelated damage and identified Mr. Holloway as the cause. That is the basis for a felony insurance fraud referral outside this court. The room did not gasp. It emptied itself of sound altogether. If you still believe real justice is possible in this world, stay with me through the end of this. Not because justice is easy, because sometimes it arrives only after every layer of comfort has been stripped away and the truth is standing there with nowhere left to hide. Gavin asked for an immediate recess. I granted 15 minutes. When I returned, he informed the court Chloe wished to change course. She would stipulate to the social media posts, the false insurance submission, and the violation of my no-contact order. Naomi said the city would still proceed on sworn testimony and seek full findings. Chloe was no longer deciding the shape of the day. She was only deciding how much more of herself the room would have to hear. When Chloe finally took the stand in her own defense, she did not look at Arthur once, not once. She said she had been embarrassed, overwhelmed, and careless with language. She said the Snapchat draft was a joke never meant to be posted. She said the insurance line item was an assistant's misunderstanding. She said her TikTok was about public stress, not Arthur. Every answer shifted like wet paper. Naomi waited until Chloe had finished building that pile of excuses. Then she asked one question. At 10:51 p.m., before police arrived, when you laughed and said, "He'll take the hit," who's going to believe I clipped myself? Were you joking or were you telling the truth? Chloe said, I was upset. Naomi repeated the question. Chloe said nothing. Naomi tried again. At 8:06 a.m. on 20th October, when you texted, add all the front right damage, they won't know the difference. Was that an assistant's misunderstanding or your instruction? Chloe looked at Gavin. Gavin looked down. Chloe said, I don't remember. Naomi held up the carrier-certified log and said, your phone remembered. There are moments in court when a lie dies not with a bang, but with a soft collapse. This was one of them. Arthur was watching her then, not with triumph, but with sadness so plain it hurt to see. Lena sat very still beside him, both hands around her inhaler now, as if steadying herself against some invisible wind. Marcus had stopped shifting his weight at the door. Denise was no longer writing fast. She was writing carefully. The whole courtroom had become a listening body. Then Arthur asked if he could speak before evidence closed. Gavin objected again. Naomi said the city had no objection if it related to impact. I allowed it in limited form. Arthur rose with his cane and faced me, not Chloe. He said, Your Honor, I want the court to know this was not only about me. I volunteer for the Veterans Mobility Office at Cedar Grove 3 days a week. When they suspended me because of the citation and the online mess, one man missed his wound care ride on 24th October. Another woman had to reschedule her cardiac check because there was no backup driver on short notice. I do not say that to add weight. I say it because lies travel farther than people think. That was the hidden, deeper truth. What looked like one ticket had reached past Arthur's truck and into the fragile routines of other old people who depended on him. Harm rarely stays where the rich intend it to stay. Then Arthur said the line people still quote back to me when they meet me in the grocery store. He looked at no one but the bench and said, "A lie told against a poor man does not stay small. It rolls downhill until it crushes everyone standing under him." After that, the room went silent in the deepest way I have ever heard. Not awkward, not empty, full of what had finally been understood. If you have ever carried a hurt that spread beyond you and touched your family, your work, or your good name, tell me in the comments what helped you stand back up. I read those answers more carefully than you might think. When I came back out, the room rose, then it sat. Even Chloe sat slowly now. Her shoulders had lowered. Her face looked less like anger and more like the first cold touch of consequence. I began with findings of fact. I said the city had proven by the greater weight and the credible evidence that Chloe Mercer Vail, age 32, operated her 2022 Lamborghini Urus recklessly at 10:47 p.m. on 19th October 2023 in the pickup lane at Parker's Pharmacy, 214 East Bell Street, Cedar Grove, Ohio. I found that her vehicle, not Arthur Holloway's, closed the unsafe angle and initiated the contact. I found Arthur Holloway not responsible for citation 23 TRD 447281 and ordered that ticket dismissed with prejudice. Arthur bowed his head. He did not smile. Sometimes relief is too tired for a smile. Then I found Chloe guilty of criminal damaging for the harm done to Arthur's truck and medication packaging, guilty of filing a false police report through knowingly false statements that caused official action against him, and guilty of contempt for violating my no-contact order through indirect social media conduct on 21st December 2023. I stated on the record that the evidence also supported referral of the insurance matter to the county prosecutor and the Ohio Department of Insurance. Denise read back the findings to confirm. My voice was steady. Hers was too. Then I turned from findings to meaning, because a sentence without moral logic is just math. I told Chloe that courts do not exist to punish success, beauty, fame, or money. They exist to set limits where one human being starts treating another as disposable. I said, "You did not make one bad turn in a parking lane and then tell one panicked lie. You saw an old man carrying medicine for his granddaughter, decided he was easy to blame, and tried to build profit and protection on top of his dignity. That is not carelessness. That is contempt for equality itself." Her mouth opened once, then closed. I said, "You were not on trial for being wealthy. You were on trial because you believed wealth could choose the facts." Then I looked at Arthur and Lena and back at Chloe. It cannot, not here. No one moved. I could hear the courthouse clock in the hall mark the quarter hour. Then I imposed sentence. On reckless operation and criminal damaging together, I sentenced Chloe Vail to 180 days in the county jail, with 150 days suspended and 30 days to be served in the women's unit beginning March 2024 at 8 a.m. On the false report and contempt findings, I imposed 2 years of supervised probation. I suspended her driver's license for 12 months, effective immediately with no occupational driving privilege for the first 90 days. Her hand flew to the defense table then, as if she needed to catch herself on wood. For the first time, she looked frightened. I was not finished. I ordered restitution in the exact amount of $8,614.23. That figure covered Arthur's truck repair, replacement of the damaged prescription medication, towing, 3 months of alternate transport costs, bus fares tied to Lena's medical appointments, and documented incidental expenses caused by the false citation and suspension review. Naomi had the invoices. Gavin had reviewed them. The number was not anger. It was proof. Then I added the part people still talk about. As a condition of probation, Chloe was ordered to complete 320 hours of community service with the Cedar Grove Veterans Mobility Office and the Parker's Senior Prescription Delivery Program, split evenly under direct supervision with no self-promotion, no filming, no posting, and no publicity of any kind. She would answer phones, schedule rides, wipe down vans, carry grocery bags, deliver medication packets, and sit face-to-face with the kind of people she had called feral, peasants, and grievance culture. I said, "Yea, for 1 year you will spend time serving the people you treated as background, not so you can perform goodness, not so the internet can watch you pretend to learn. You will do it because the harm you caused moved through a chain of ordinary need, and your sentence will move back through that same chain in repair. That was the punishment that fit the wound, not revenge. Repair with memory. If you have ever wished the law would do more than find people and send them home, keep listening. The best sentences do not just hurt. They teach, restore, and make the truth impossible to ignore. Arthur had not cried during any of it, not during Lena's testimony, not during the Snapchat video, not during the dismissal of his ticket. But when I read the dismissal into the record and said, "Mr. Holloway, the court formally clears you of responsibility in this matter," he lifted one hand to his face and pressed his thumb against the corner of his eye. Just once, that was all. Lena leaned into him, small and quick, then straightened at once like she did not want to make a scene. That restraint did more to break my heart than any sobbing ever could have. People who have lived with worry too long learn how to contain joy too. In the gallery, one of the veterans in the back removed his cap and held it against his chest. Another wiped his cheek with the heel of his hand and stared at the floor like he hoped nobody noticed. Denise set her pen down for 1 second after the last sentence was entered. Marcus looked straight ahead the whole time, but I could see the muscle in his jaw working. Chloe sat frozen. The color had left her lips. Her assistant from the first day was not there anymore. Neither was the smug energy. Gavin spoke quietly to her about surrender paperwork and referral exposure. She did not answer him at first. Then she asked very low, "Do I really have to do the service hours there?" I answered before Gavin could, "Yes." There are times when the atmosphere of a courtroom becomes as real as any witness. That day, it felt like the room itself had been waiting for a sentence that remembered all the small people who keep a town alive. The old benches, the tile floor, the vent hiss overhead, the flag in the corner, even the dust in the winter light. Everything seemed to settle at once. Before I adjourned, Naomi requested that the no-contact order remain through the full probation term unless Arthur requested otherwise. I granted it. Gavin asked whether service hours could be transferred to another nonprofit outside town due to publicity concerns. I said no. Publicity was part of the wound. Hiding from the people she harmed was not a condition I intended to reward. Then I struck the gavel once, not hard, just enough. Court should have ended there, but some moments need room to breathe after the official language is done. People began to stand, papers moved, chairs scraped. Marcus opened the side gate. Chloe stayed seated for a second too long, as if motion itself had become difficult. Arthur, meanwhile, took longer for another reason. He was old, he was tired, and the day had cost him. I stepped down from the bench after the room cleared enough to make it proper. Judges do not do that often during active sessions, but the docket was done, and what remained was human, not procedural. Arthur was still by counsel table with Lena beside him, his brown envelope tucked under one arm, his cane in his left hand. Up close, I could see the mended elbow on his sweater again. He looked at me and said very softly, "Thank you for seeing me, Your Honor." I answered him with the truest thing I had. "Mr. Holloway, that is what the bench is for." He gave one small nod. Then Lena said, "He told me if the truth got a fair room, it would stand." I smiled at her then, though I do not smile much on the record. Your grandfather was right. If you have someone in your life who taught you to stand up straight without turning cruel, share this story with them. People like that do not always know how far their lessons travel. Time passed after that the way it always does, by ordinary days first and meaning later. Chloe surrendered on 1 March 2024 as ordered. She served her 30 days. The county prosecutor later accepted the insurance fraud referral for separate review, and in September 2024, she entered a plea agreement in common pleas court on a reduced nonviolent fraud count tied to the false claim. That court ordered separate financial penalties and reporting conditions. I followed it only from a distance because once a matter leaves my bench, it belongs to another judge. What stayed with me closer was what happened inside my own order. The Veterans Mobility Office Director, retired Colonel Evelyn Sloan, sent monthly compliance reports. Chloe reported for service on 8 April 2024 at 7:30 a.m. wearing plain jeans, no logos, hair tied back, face bare. The first week, according to Sloan, she hardly spoke except to ask where to place clipboards and whether she could wear gloves to clean van rails. By week 3, she had learned the regular riders' names. One of them was Thomas Weller, age 79, a Korean War veteran who needed rides to wound care twice a week. He was one of the men Arthur had mentioned during trial. Sloan wrote that on 3rd of May 2024, Mr. Weller handed Chloe a pharmacy bag and told her, "Hold this steady, miss. Some things matter more than your sleeves." That line made it into the report because Chloe repeated it later during a supervision check. Sometimes change begins with being spoken to plainly by someone who owes you nothing. At Parker's senior prescription delivery program, Janice Lewin supervised the other half of Chloe's hours. Janice wrote that Chloe never asked to skip the hard tasks after the first month. She packed medication bags, read addresses twice, and carried boxes to porches in the rain. She was not warm exactly, not transformed into a saint. Life is not that neat. But she stopped performing herself. That mattered. Her social media changed too, not because of a rebrand, because the probation order and separate plea conditions made performance costly. Sponsorships dried up. Followers drifted away. By summer, people in town said the pearl white Urus had been sold. I do not know if that was true until much later, when a restitution payment ledger showed a large lump sum posted in July. Money had come from somewhere. Arthur never asked where. If you want to be here for the next story I tell, the reason is simple. Cases like this remind us how thin the line can be between being ignored and being seen, and I think that line matters too much to miss. Thank you for staying with me through this one. I do not take your time lightly, and I do not tell these stories unless I believe they carry something worth keeping. If you want to hear the next case that still wakes me before dawn, stay close, because the next story is about a woman who walked into my courtroom with $10 in her purse and changed the way I looked at mercy forever.